I forgot to toggle the classes on for the Boston classes.
Oh, do that.
I just did that. Just did that.
No sweat.
And
Still
everything just came on now. So
we two out?
We two out.
Should I do the announcements again?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so all right. Okay, so today's the history class for Boston. We're going to talk about Greek homosexuality, the history behind that, and we're gonna show the paradigm of why Greek philosophy and Greek culture is a big part of American culture and American philosophy. Before we do that, let's get some questions. Anyone got questions online? Let's give it about a minute. We're not gonna waste too much time. When you come to class, you should always have questions on deck. When you don't have questions, this is more specifically for the brothers online. When you don't have questions, what you're telling the Lord is that you know the scriptures, you know the Bible. But then at the same time, bringing questions can edify someone else. You know what I'm saying? It could definitely shed some light to someone else that's pondering the same questions. Keep in mind that the Bible talks about, one body, one mind, one faith, one baptism. You know what I mean? So you could be helping out a brother that's, battling in his mind a specific question that can make him doubtful. And the last thing you want to be is doubtful when Christ comes back. You know what I mean? It's either yay or nay. You know what I'm saying? It's either you hot or you cold. And, we want to make sure you hot for the Lord. You know what I mean? And if you cold for the Lord, this ain't the place for you. But that's what brotherhood's all about. You know what I'm saying? That's the one thing that the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge has perfected is brotherhood. You know what I'm saying? We perfected it to the T. But I'll give it another minute for questions. I'm going to bring out some interesting things today. We're just going to wait a little bit, but, one of the things that I've complained about in this kingdom is the fact that when you think about going to the gym, Rock, you probably heard me complain about this a lot. What's the one thing I complain about all the time when it comes to physical activity, like going to the gym?
Specifically?
Get right to the
meat.
Punch me in the stomach with this one.
Too many Edomites being flagrant about their body.
Explain more. What do you mean?
Edomites walking around butt-ass naked.
Yes. Okay, so one of my biggest challenges is the gym, right? You go to the gym, you want to work out, right? But in the midst, the population that's in the gym is Israel and heathens, right? And in Israel, we have a law that pertains to, showing thy nakedness, right? Why did, I'm going to ask you a question, and whoever can answer this online, answer it. Why did Noah curse Canaan?
Because Canaan's forefather Ham made light of seeing his father's nudity.
And what did his other two brothers do, Shem and Japheth?
They walked upon his father's nudity, but backwards. They did not try to view it.
Not looking upon his shame.
Correct.
Not looking upon his nakedness, right? Now, what's interesting about what I'm about to bring out is going to tie into what America is trying to do to our children in regards to their predatory approach in homosexualizing and sexualizing our children, right? And the reason why I'm going to bring this up is because Greece comes to the forefront of what's going on with what they call pedophilia in America. You know what I'm saying? And the idea, or not even the idea, but the problem with pedophilia is that it's something that has stemmed since, and more importantly, since, you know, since ancient Greece. And what America is trying to push is they're trying to push this pedophilia agenda to make it so it's legal to satisfy a pedophile's lust, to make it so there's no punishment for that type of abominable behavior. And lawmakers are pushing to lighten the sentences of, you know, child rape. They're pushing to make light of the act of pedophilia. And we're gonna look into the prime paradigm of pedophilia and of child abduction and of child rape, is what I like to call it, right? It's a proper way to put that, right? And we're going to dive into ancient Greece and see what propelled this sadistic movement, and why it was why it was a big debate amongst philosophers and lawmakers and scholars, and why it's a big debate in America today. You know, when you go to your municipal, or when you go to your local police station, what do they have on the screen? More than likely, they have missing persons, right? Missing children, missing persons, and they have sex offenders, right? And they're categorized by levels. And Captain Akkad brought this out perfectly today when he brought an article out about how they're trying to not classify people that have been charged with, what's the proper word to say? Child rape, child molestation,
child abuse.
They're trying to make it so those people do not get the heavy weight of the law, or the punishment of the law. And we're gonna really have to find the root to this and why it was appropriate in ancient Greece and why they're trying to make it appropriate in America. And so we're gonna have to pull out a couple of scriptures to really drive it home. You know what I mean? You know, when the Israelites were in Greece at that time, it was under the Hellenistic period where we were subjugated to keeping Grecian laws, and we were denied the right to worship our power. You know what I mean? But let's really get into these articles real quick, because there's an interesting one that I want to bring up. But before I bring that up, and the reason why I'm bringing up the gym because it plays an important role in all this. But I want you to go to Salaki. Rock, I want you to go to type in homosexuality Greece, right? Type that in real quick. Salaki. It starts with you going to the beach with your shirt off, right? It starts with brothers walking around with their shirts off, whatever, right? Not covering up, right? It starts in small increments, it starts on a small scale. Now, why is it that in ancient Greece, why did sports play a big part in predatory pedophilia?
Why do sports play a big part in predatory pedophilia?
In sports, when I say sports, I'm talking about gymnasiums.
Because the parents are giving their giving their children to the basically to the pedophiles.
Okay, hold that thought, right?
Kind of okay.
Go to the first, jump out, hold this, right? Go to, type in homosexuality Greece, go to the first one. Hold that article right there.
I got the article.
Huh?
I got the article.
No, hold that one. Jump out of that. Type in homosexuality Greece, and let's go to Wiki on this one.
Go to what?
Let's go to Wiki on this one.
Okay.
Hold that one though. There's a couple of terms I want to pull out so you understand what I'm talking about.
Homosexuality Greece.
Go ahead.
In the wiki.
Yep. Go ahead.
Loading up right now.
And we're going to show the parallel between the laws that they're trying to push today to victimize our children, the Dwayne Wade movement. What other movement? There's a bunch of them that's going on. The Bruce Jenner movement. There's so many of them. You know what I mean? Where they're hypersexualizing our children. And making it and desensitizing the idea of this abomination.
Is there a certain section of this?
No, we're going to start in the beginning. Because there's a couple of terms I need from this to be able to better explain what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
Homosexuality in ancient Greece.
Go ahead.
Wikipedia is the source.
Go ahead.
In classical antiquity,
Go ahead.
writers such as Herodotus, Plato, Xenophon, Athenius.
Let me tell you something. These were famous philosophers, right?
Greek
philosophers that at the time, they were the topic of debate for the things that they were writing, right? And so they were the ones that observed the times. So everyone had their era. Plato had his era. Socrates had his era. Athenius had their era, right? And writers were not something like, it's not something that you see today. Writers have always been, they've always been notable. You know what I'm saying? They've always had a sense of notability because it's just like, writers were the historians. They were the ones that came up with certain philosophies that the mass followed, right? They were the ones that came up with myths, right? It was always the writers. When you think about the Bible, right? Who wrote the Bible?
Prophets of the Most High.
Well, who wrote it?
Black, Hispanic, and Native men.
Scribes. Black, Hispanic, scribes wrote the Bible. They wrote it.
Okay.
So if if you're right now, who's writing what I'm doing right now?
Black and Hispanic and Native
No,
American.
the video, this class right now, who's writing it?
Actually, nobody's writing it.
Who's the scribe? What's the modern day scribe?
Modern day scribe is the video recording.
It's the video camera, right?
Yeah.
It's, what is it doing? What's the action? It's recording everything I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the scribes were back then, right? That's what these writers were back then. They recorded the things that were going on, whether it was factual or whether it was something that was opinionated, whether it was something that they, whether it was based on how they felt, right? And these were some of the famous philosophers at this time. Keep reading.
Count out on one count. Salaki. And many others explored aspects of homosexuality in Greece.
So you got to think about Greece, right? In the empire. The Grecian Empire was a bunch of city-states, a bunch of them. There was the Grecians, there was the Athenians, it was a bunch of city-states. So every city-state had a different view on homosexuality, right? Different aspects of homosexuality had a different view on it. And so these writers explored the different aspects depending on the societal measures of homosexuality. Go ahead.
Count out on one count.
And the social, and also the social significance and the structures behind it. But go ahead.
The most widespread and socially significant form of same-sex sexual relations.
Say it again.
Same-sex sexual relations.
Go ahead. Which is what?
In ancient Greece,
which is homosexuality.
Which
is homosexuality and lesbianism, right?
Huh.
Keep going.
Relations in ancient Greece was between adult men and pubescent and adolescent boys.
Or adolescent boys, right?
Or adolescent boys. Pedophilia.
So in ancient Greece, you were considered a boy until you had a full beard. And they had laws that limited what age you can target these boys, right? And so we're going to pull up some interesting terms that when you read it, you're going to be like, oh, that's what they're doing in America. This is exactly what they're doing. Because America follows Greek and Greek philosophy. Go ahead.
Known as pederasty.
Now, pay attention to this term, pederasty. What does it say?
Marriages in ancient Greece between men and women were also age structured.
So marriages were age structured, meaning this. A 50-year-old man married a 15-year-old woman, girl, right? There was an age structure with marriage, right? Keep going.
Slakia. With men in their 30s commonly taking wives in their early teens.
Right. So older men they'd pull a GMS. They'd take wives in their early teens, 13, 14, 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was what was common at that time, right? Because the earlier that you got them, the less likelihood that they've been with another man. That's how Greeks thought, right? Same way GMS thinks, right? Keep reading. No, actually, click on pederasty, which is a not too far from pedophilia.
When we click on pederasty?
Yeah, click on that. Let's read this real quick.
Pederasty in ancient Greece was a socially acknowledged romantic relationship between an adult male,
which they called the what?
The Erastes.
Pay attention to that. The Erastes, go ahead.
And a younger male, the Eromenus.
Yeah.
Usually in his teens.
Okay, so now here's what I'm about to explain to you, Rob. Watch how crazy this sounds, right? When you would recruit a trooper, right? You'd recruit him at a young age, right? And that trooper would need a mentor, right? Someone to guide him and to teach him, right? As he's going into adulthood, right? And there were stages to this. So the erastes, which were the older adult males, and the younger male, the Romanists, played a role. One had to play the dominant role, and one had to play the what? The passive role, right? Watch how sick this gets. Go ahead.
Kind of the one kind. And it was characteristic of the archaic and classical periods.
Go ahead.
The influence of pederasty on Greek culture of these periods was so pervasive
Go ahead.
that it has been called a principal culture model for free relationship between citizens.
And this is what they're trying to do in America.
Wow.
They're trying to do a free relationship between older adult men and children, so that the lines of harming a child through pedophilia has no laws that bound it. There's no law. There's no boundary to it, right? This is what's going on in ancient Greece, right? Pervasive means something that was like existing or like spreading through, every part of something. Very pervasive, right? Keep reading. Watch how crazy this gets.
Kind of the one kind. Some scholars locate its origin in initial ritual.
Go ahead.
Particularly rites of passage on Crete, where it was associated with entrance into military life.
So imagine the erastes, right, the old adult males, as the mentors, right? As these Romanists or these teens are going into the military life, they needed mentors to go into the military life, right? Keep reading.
And the religion of Zeus,
which was heavy, right? Because Zeus was also one of those that there's a myth of him abducting a boy that we're going to talk about, whose name was Salaki. I'm going to pull up his name right now. His name was, it's a very famous name. It's Ganymede is his name, right? Keep reading.
It has no formal existence in the Homeric epics and seems to have developed in the late 7th century BCE as an aspect of Greek homosocial culture.
Homosocial culture.
God damn.
Hold that term right there. Homosocial culture, right? In sociology, homosociality means same-sex relationships that are not of a romantic or sexual nature, such as friendship or mentorship or others. The opposite of homosocial is heterosocial, preferring non-sexual relationships with the opposite sex in group relations involving more than two individuals. Go ahead.
Salaki, sir. So the opposite of homosocial is heterosocial, which is non-sexual.
You know what they're trying to say?